Ladies and gentlemen, Asian guy here. We have spent the last few weeks looking at the micromechanics of the silver market. We looked at the squeeze, the algorithms, and the industrial shortage. But today, we have to zoom out. We have to look at the map of the world. Because the banker flip we uncovered the moment JP Morgan and the US giants went net long on silver is not just a trade. It is a geopolitical declaration of war. But it's not a war against Russia. It's not a war against China. It is a war against the United States dollar. When the biggest bank in America, the bank that effectively acts as the right arm of the Federal Reserve, decides to hoard precious metals, they are sending a signal that echoes through the halls of history. They are saying, we no longer trust the paper we print. You have to understand the gravity of this. JP Morgan is the dollar system. They are the primary dealer. They are the plumbing of the fiat Ponzi scheme. For them to bet on silver is like the Pope betting against the Catholic Church. It is an act of heresy. Unless they know the church is burning down. This brings us to the Great Reset. For years, people thought this was a conspiracy theory. They thought it was about tracking chips or eating bugs. But in financial terms, the Great Reset is very simple. It is the end of a debt cycle. It is the moment when the mathematical impossibility of the current system meets reality. It is the moment when the debt becomes unpayable and the currency must be debased to zero to wipe the slate clean. JP Morgan knows this. Citi knows this. They have the best analysts in the world. They sit in the meetings with the Treasury Department. They see the tax receipts. They see the interest payments on the national debt hitting $1 trillion a year. They see the fiscal dominance. And they realized something in December 2025. The US dollar is mathematically doomed. So what does a rational predator do when the ship is sinking? Do they keep rearranging the deck chairs? Do they keep buying US Treasury bonds that yield 4% while inflation runs at 10%? No, they run to the lifeboats. And in the history of finance, there are only two lifeboats that never sink, gold and silver. By flipping net long on silver, the US banks have effectively shorting the dollar. You buy silver to protect purchasing power. You buy silver if you believe the currency is going to lose value. If JP Morgan believed in the soft landing, if they believed in the strength of the US economy, they would be short silver and long the dollar. They would be betting on the status quo. But they flipped. They switched sides. This is the canary in the coal mine. They are front-running the inevitable devaluation of the currency. They are positioning themselves to be on the winning side of the wealth transfer. They know that when the reset happens, wealth isn't destroyed, it is transferred. It transfers from the holders of paper, bonds, cash, to the holders of hard assets, gold, silver, land. For 40 years, the US banks suppressed silver to protect the dollar. A rising gold and silver price is a report card on the currency. If silver goes to $100, it means the dollar gets an F. So the government and the banks work together to keep the price down, to mask the inflation, to make the dollar look strong. This was the strong dollar policy. But the flip signals that the strong dollar policy is dead. They have abandoned the defense. They are letting the castle walls fall. Why? Because they realized they can no longer defend it against the rising tide of the East. They realized that if they keep shorting silver, they will just be handing cheap metal to China and Russia. They decided that if the dollar is going to die, they might as well be the ones holding the murder weapon, silver. This is a strategic pivot of empire-ending proportions. It means the US financial elite have accepted the decline. They are preparing for a post-dollar world, a world where full faith and credit is replaced by weight and measure. Think about the timing. Debt to GDP is at 125%. The BRICS nations are expanding. Saudi Arabia is selling oil in yuan. The petrodollar, the system that allowed the US to export inflation to the world, is fracturing. In this environment, holding a naked short position on gold or silver is suicide. It is standing in front of a freight train of history. JP Morgan is not suicidal. They are survivors. They survived the Civil War. They survived the Great Depression. They survived 2008. How? By being ruthless, by knowing when to betray their masters. And right now, they are betraying the Federal Reserve note to save their own balance sheet. This confirms the reset because a reset requires a revaluation. To clear the debt, the price of gold and silver must be allowed to rise significantly to backstop the new system. We're talking about gold at $10,000 or $20,000, silver at $200 or $500. This isn't inflation. This is the currency collapsing against the constant of money. The banks are positioning for this revaluation. They want to be long when the holiday is declared. They want to be long when the president comes on TV and announces a new dollar. If they were short, they will be bankrupt. By being long, they become the kings of the new system. This is why the suppression stopped. The suppression was a tool for the old system. In the new system, high metal prices are actually necessary to capitalize the central banks. The US holds 8,000 tons of gold, allegedly. If gold goes to $20,000, the US balance sheet looks healthy again. The banks have realized that the government wants higher prices now. The game has changed from suppress to inflate. And silver? Silver is the high beta leverage to this trade. If gold resets the monetary system, silver resets the industrial and populist system. It is the people's money. JP Morgan knows that when the dollar loses its reserve status, the world will scramble for tangible assets. This flip is the smoke signal. The fire is the debt. The exit is the metal. The banks are running for the exit. They aren't telling you to run. They are telling you on CNBC that everything is fine, but watch their hands, not their lips. Their hands are grabbing every silver contract they can find. The betrayal of the fiat system is complete. The guardians have become the looters. They are looting the remaining value of the dollar and storing it in the vault. The Great Reset isn't coming. It started the moment the net position turned positive. We have established that the US banks are betting against the dollar. But who are they betting on? Or rather, who are they afraid of? The answer lies in the East. It lies in the BRICS alliance: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the new members. For the last 5 years, while the West was printing money and focusing on ESG and identity politics, the East was buying gold. Central banks in China, Russia, and India have been buying gold at a record pace. They have been draining the LBMA. They have been bypassing the dollar in trade. This is not a coincidence. This is a coordinated assault on the US dollar's hegemony. The BRICS nations know that they cannot beat the US military, but they can beat the US Treasury. They can bleed the dollar dry by demanding payment in real things. JP Morgan sees this. They see the M-Bridge project, the new digital payment platform that allows China to trade with Thailand or UAE without using a single US dollar. They see the BRICS pay system. They realize that the exorbitant privilege owned of the US, the ability to print money to buy oil and toasters, is ending. If the world splits into two blocks, the dollar block and the commodity block, silver becomes the bridge. Silver is money in both worlds. But in the BRICS world, silver is prized higher because it is a commodity. The BRICS nations are commodity rich. Russia has energy. Brazil has agriculture. South Africa has platinum. China has rare earths. They are building a currency system backed by a basket of commodities. Gold is the anchor, but silver, oil, and copper are the weights. In this system, a naked short position on silver is an attack on the BRICS currency. If JP Morgan stayed short, they would effectively be fighting the People's Bank of China. They would be fighting the Kremlin. And in a resource war, the guy with the paper, JP Morgan, loses to the guy with the resource, BRICS. You cannot print oil, you cannot print silver. So the US banks decided to front-run the BRICS. They realized if China is going to monetize gold and silver, we need to own it before they corner the market. This is a defensive pivot. They are buying silver to have a seat at the negotiating table of the New World Order. When the Global Reset Conference happens, a modern-day Bretton Woods, the nations will sit down to decide what the new reserve currency is. The US will show up with its debt. China will show up with its gold. Who has the leverage? But if the US banks hold the derivative books and the physical stockpiles of silver, they retain power. They can say, fine, we move to a gold-silver standard. We own the silver. This is why they flipped. It is a desperate attempt to preserve American financial dominance in a post-dollar era. The petrodollar died quietly in 2024 when Saudi Arabia didn't renew the 50-year security pact. Now we are entering the era of the petro-yuan gold mechanism. You sell oil for yuan, you convert yuan to gold on the Shanghai exchange. There is no dollar in that loop. As this loop grows, the demand for dollars falls. When demand for dollars falls, those dollars come home. They flood back into the US economy, causing hyperinflation. This is the nightmare scenario for the Fed. It is the Triffin dilemma in reverse. JP Morgan is hedging against this reflux. If hyperinflation hits the US because the world rejects the dollar, the price of silver in nominal dollars goes to infinity. The BRICS nations are also the industrial centers of the world. They make the solar panels, China. They make the electronics. They consume the silver. So they control the physical market. For decades, the West controlled the paper market. The banker flip is the West admitting that the paper market can no longer control the physical market. The East has drained the vaults. The Shanghai premium, the difference between the price of silver in China versus New York, has been positive for months. This is an arbitrage that screams the metal is flowing east. JP Morgan stopped shorting because they realized they were just subsidizing China. Every time they smashed the price, China bought more. They were selling the family silver to the rival for pennies. Finally, someone in a boardroom in New York said, "Stop, we are arming our enemy." So they flipped. Now, they are riding the rocket with China. They have aligned their interests with the BRICS. Think about how crazy that is. The biggest US bank is now on the same side of the trade as Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping regarding precious metals. This confirms the multipolar world. The unipolar moment is over. The U.S. banks are acting like independent city-states now. They are looking out for themselves. If the U.S. government goes down with the dollar ship, J.P. Morgan intends to be on the BRICS life raft. This geopolitical struggle is the macro driver. The industrial shortage is the micro driver. The AI algorithms are the technical driver. But the geopolitics is the why. Why now? Because the BRICS summit in late 2024 made it clear the alternative payment system is live, the threat is real. The reset is the transition from a US-led debt system to a multipolar asset system. Silver is the most undervalued asset in that transition. It is the poor man's gold, but it is also the strategic metal of the East. By going long, U.S. banks are buying an insurance policy against the collapse of the American empire. It is a sobering thought. But as investors, we must look at what they do, not what they say. They are betting on the collapse of the system they created. That should tell you everything you need to know about the safety of your bank account. We have looked at the external threat, BRICS. Now we must look at the internal cancer, the United States debt spiral. This is the mathematical engine of the Great Reset, and it is the primary reason why J.P. Morgan knows the game is over. Let's look at the numbers. The U.S. national debt is over $36 trillion. It is growing by $1 trillion every 100 days. But the debt number itself isn't the problem. The interest on the debt is the killer. Since the Federal Reserve raised rates to fight inflation, the cost of servicing that debt has exploded. The U.S. government is now paying more on interest than it pays for the entire Defense Department. This creates a doom loop. To pay the interest, the government has to borrow more money. This increases the debt, which increases the interest, which requires more borrowing. It is a compound interest curve that has gone vertical. J.P. Morgan is the primary dealer of this debt. They are the ones who have to buy the treasuries at the auctions. They see the lack of demand. Foreigners aren't buying. The BRICS aren't buying. So who is buying? The Fed is buying, stealth QE, or the banks are forced to buy. But here's the trap. The Fed has two choices. Choice A, keep interest rates high to fight inflation. This crashes the economy, banks fail, like SVB, and the interest payments bankrupt the U.S. government. Choice B, lower interest rates and print money, yield curve control. This saves the government's solvency, but triggers massive inflation and destroys the dollar. J.P. Morgan knows there is no choice C, there's no way out. They know the Fed will eventually choose choice B, they will choose inflation. They will choose to sacrifice the dollar to save the government. This is called financial repression. In a financial repression scenario, real interest rates are deeply negative. Inflation is 10%, rates are 4%. You lose 6% purchasing power every year. In this environment, you cannot hold bonds. You cannot hold cash. You must hold assets that cannot be printed. The banker flip to long silver is a direct bet on choice B. They are betting that the Fed will turn on the money printer to monetize the debt. When the printer turns on, the monetary base expands. Silver, being a monetary metal with fixed supply, must reprice higher to account for the new paper. This is simple math. $36 trillion in debt, 8,000 tons of gold amount. Gold price of roughly $130,000 per ounce. The current price of $30 is a fiction based on the idea that the debt will be paid back. J.P. Morgan knows the debt will never be paid back. It will be inflated away. The reset is the default. It is a soft default via inflation. This explains the urgency. The banks are scrubbing their books of shorts because they know the pivot is coming. The Fed will have to cut rates and restart QE, possibly in 2026, to prevent a sovereign default. When that pivot happens, the dollar crashes and commodities fly. JP Morgan wants to be positioned before the pivot. They're also looking at the unrealized losses on their bond portfolios. Remember, banks hold trillions in treasuries. As rates went up, the value of those bonds crashed. The U.S. banking system is sitting on $700 billion in unrealized losses. They are technically insolvent. How do you hedge a bond portfolio that is bleeding to death? You buy the asset that creates the bleed. You buy the inflation hedge. You buy silver. The profit on the long silver position is designed to offset the loss on the bond position. It is a perfect hedge. If the Fed saves the bonds, silver goes up due to printing. If the Fed lets bonds crash, the system collapses, and silver goes up as a safe haven. It is a heads I win, tails you lose trade for the banks. But for the average American holding dollars in a savings account, it is heads I lose, tails I lose. The purchasing power of your savings is the fuel being burned to keep the system alive. The Great Reset essentially means resetting the liability side of the balance sheet. It means making the $36 trillion manageable by making each dollar worth 10 cents. In that scenario, a loaf of bread is $20, gas is $15, and silver is $100. The banks are preparing for this hyperinflationary depression. They are becoming hard asset banks. Look at what they are doing in other sectors. Buying rental homes, BlackRock, buying farmland, and now buying silver. They are exiting the financial economy and entering the real economy. This confirms that the financialization era is over. Making money from money is done. Now, you make money from owning things. The US dollar is no longer a store of value. It is a hot potato. JP Morgan just passed the potato to the Europeans, the bag holders, and grabbed the silver. The internal rot of the US fiscal situation is terminal. There is no political will to fix it. No one is talking about cutting spending. No one is talking about balancing the budget. So the only variable that can move is the value of the currency. It has to go down. The long silver bet is a vote of no confidence in the US Congress and the Federal Reserve. It is the ultimate insider trade. They are betting against their own headquarters. And they are going to win because math always wins in the end. So we have the geopolitical war, BRICS, and the internal collapse, debt. These two forces are converging to create the Great Reset. Now let's talk about the endgame. Let's talk about the bifurcation of the world and the lifeboat strategy. The banker flip tells us that the globalized financial system is fracturing. We are moving into a bifurcated world. Two systems, two prices, two realities. In the West, we will likely see financial repression, capital controls, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. The government will try to lock you into the digital dollar to prevent you from fleeing the inflation. They will make it hard to buy crypto. They will make it hard to move money offshore. But silver? Silver is physical. It is off-grid. It is private. JP Morgan knows that in a regime of high financial surveillance, privacy carries a premium. They are buying silver not just as a hedge, but as a sovereign asset. For the individual investor, this is the final warning. The window is closing. When the biggest predator in the jungle, JP Morgan, stops hunting the prey, silver, and starts eating it, you know the ecosystem has changed. You don't have much time left to acquire the asset at these suppressed prices. The lifeboat strategy is simple. Get out of the dollar and into the things the dollar is priced in. But you have to do it before the official revaluation. There will come a Monday morning, maybe next month, maybe next year, where the price of gold and silver is repegged. The markets will be closed. The announcement will be made. To stabilize the financial system, the U.S. Treasury is pegging the dollar to gold at $10,000 Oz. If you hold dollars that morning, you lost. If you hold gold and silver, you were preserved. The U.S. banks are positioning to be on the right side of that announcement. They want to be the ones holding the revalued asset. This is why they trap the foreign banks. They want the foreign banks to fail. It allows the U.S. banks to consolidate even more power. Oh, Credit Suisse blew up? We'll buy them for $1. This is the consolidation phase of the reset. The strong eat the weak. But you can play this game too. You don't need $1 billion. You just need an ounce. An ounce of silver is a bearer bond with no counterparty risk. It is a share in the new system. It is a vote for freedom. The U.S. banks going long is a validation of everything the stacker community has been saying for 10 years. We were right about the debt. We were right about the inflation. We were right about the manipulation. And now the manipulators are admitting we were right by copying our trade. Do not let them shake you out now. They will try. They will create volatility. They will try to scare you into selling your useless rock so they can buy it. Do not fall for it. They're desperate for inventory. The Great Reset is not the end of the world. It is the end of the world as we know it. It is the end of the cheap credit, fiat illusion world. But for those who hold real assets, it is a new beginning. It is the restoration of fair value. Think about what $100 silver means. It means the mining industry is reborn. It means real money circulates again. It means the savers are rewarded and the debtors are punished. It is a return to sanity, but the transition to sanity is chaotic. The banker flip is the first tremor of the earthquake. The tectonic plates have shifted. The tsunami is forming. You have time to get to high ground. JP Morgan is already on high ground. They are sitting on the mountain of silver, looking down at the floodwaters of fiat currency rising in the valley. They aren't going to throw you a rope. You have to climb the mountain yourself. The dollar is dying. The reset is confirmed. The bet has been placed. The wheel is spinning. Where are your chips? Are they on the house, the dollar, or are they on the truth, silver? I know where mine are. I'm Asian guy. The dollar had a good run, but math has no mercy. I'll see you in the post-reset world.